on this edition of the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show.
I think the answer that's going to surprise you is I'm not convinced the hammer falls.
Always got to have that third person, and I think Jada Richard is like the guard. Like that's the guard that can get things going.
I think that he's probably a day 3 guy is kind of where I would put him.
Is there anything when you look at this team that doesn't scream Omaha?
Nope.
Welcome in to another Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show, this time an LSU edition. We're grateful that you're here with us today. We are your host. I am Ross Jackson. This is the magnificent and very festive Doug Mouton. We're grateful to be here with you today.
Yeah, and look, we're going to talk 4 LSU sports. It's really a hot time in Baton Rouge right now, but I want to start with football, right?
Yeah,
I want to dive because we're just coming off the Senior Bowl where Garrett Nussmeier absolutely helped himself.
Yeah.
And he is one of, I think, the draft's biggest enigmas.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a first-round pick. A lot of people said that before the season. But he literally, I think, could still go anywhere between rounds 2 and 7. I do think all of that's in play. I think the NFL Combine will make a big difference with that. Where do you sit with Garrett Nussmeier's draft stock right now?
Yeah, I think he is the absolute testament of being one of those players where you just need one team to fall in love with you. And then all of a sudden, everything changes in terms of what his draft stock is. So I think that he's probably a day 3 guy is kind of where I would put him. There's a wide range there, right? That's rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7. Lots of possibilities there, but I would probably say day 3. And I think some of it, too, is going to come down to those interviews at the Combine where he gets to say, hey, here's how my rehabilitation is going. Here's how my health is going coming back from that ab injury or that core injury that kind of, shelved him a little bit during the season.
And it might not happen at the Combine, but at some point he is going to run. And look, suddenly the pure athletic numbers mean something at quarterback.
Right.
Not suddenly. That's been a trend over the last 5 years or so. I think he needs to run a good 40 time. If I had to guess right now, I'd put him in the 6th. That's just me. But if he can put up a good 40 time, his interviews are going to be good. I think it's going to be about his athleticism. He has to show NFL scouts that he can athletically play at the NFL level.
If I were him, I'm not running at the Combine, but I'll run at my pro day. I'll run at the pro day at LSU's campus. I'll get that time and then see how that potentially helps me out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I just remember Odell Beckham running at LSU's pro day. It is literally one of the most eye-opening pro days, maybe the most eye-opening I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He went to the middle of the first round instantly when he ran the 40 in Baton Rouge. Okay, and there are a lot of interesting guys. I think the consensus number 1 guy from LSU, and it's not a doubt, is cornerback Mansour Delane, who most people have as the number 1 DB. But A.J. Halsey, the safety, who had a great season for LSU in a bad year, is also really interesting. Those 2 guys should go day 1 and then day 2 at the latest, right?
Yeah, at the latest, for sure. The thing about A.J. Halsey that's really interesting is he's probably got a round 2 grade for a lot of teams. The thing that's interesting about that is that typically speaking, teams have maybe 15 to 20 round 1 grades. So that back half of the first round is usually filled with round 2 grade guys. So I could see A.J. Halsey, we're talking about speed and all these other things. If he runs well, potentially sneaking into the first round as well. But Mansour Delane is a lock for one of the top 2 corners to come off the board in this class.
And I've seen him in the mock drafts, and these are just mock drafts, but the mock drafts have gotten better in the last 5 years or so. Anywhere from 5 to about 14 in round 1. He's not going to be a top 3 or 4 pick, but he's also looks like a top half of round 1.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%.
Okay. All right, here's what we got coming up on this edition of the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show. We call it What Is on the Menu, diving into the New Orleans food scene. And on the large plates, we have LSU women's basketball. Flau'jae Johnson, LSU ranked number 6 in the country right now. Super interesting. Can Kim Mulkey get her team back to the Final Four? And college baseball just getting started. The LSU Tigers 1 or 2 in all the preseason polls. They are loaded, and Jay Johnson is the real deal. We'll get to that in a second. And then our small plate.
Yeah, we'll continue our conversation around a little bit of LSU football. Where will Garrett Nussmeier go? We're going to ask our good friend Matt Moscona about that one. And we'll also take a look at LSU basketball, men's basketball, where like you mentioned, there's only one question, and it centers around that guy right there, Matt McMahon. Does he keep his job? Does he not? What ends up happening with him? Or rather, when does it all end up?
Yeah, I think it's at least a 99% chance that he is out. And I'm keeping the 1% because of what happened to Bill Belichick.
Right,
I'm not going 100% on anything
anymore.
So I would say it's a 99% chance he will not be coaching LSU men next year. All right, our dinner guest, as Ross just teased, we've got the voice of LSU. Matt Moscona from the Locked On LSU podcast. Matt, obviously one of the leading voices in LSU coverage, and the amazing, ridiculous Ricardo LeCompte from right here at WWL TV. And our last call, Ross is making the drink. What is it and why?
Yeah, we're going with a little bit of a celebratory drink here. It's called the Cherry Bomb Fizz. Think cherry mimosa, but a little bit extra. And we're going to do this because it's my birthday today.
It's your birthday.
As we're recording it, this is a very celebratory drink, and I am extra, and therefore so is this drink.
Okay, I'm not even going to touch that one. All right, going back to LSU baseball team. This guy right now is my favorite player in college baseball. That, of course, Derek Coryell, heading into his second year in Baton Rouge. He has physically changed a little bit, which he needed, and his coach has completely endorsed that because Jay Johnson's the real deal. We're going to talk a lot more about Jay Johnson, but Derek Coryell is, I think he has a chance to be a Todd Walker type hitter at LSU. I think he has a chance to be one of the best 5 hitters in LSU history. We'll see, but I think he's that good.
Yeah.
And then going back to the draft, there are some fascinating draft guys among the LSU draftees, including that guy. That, of course, Harold Perkins, the New Orleans native, incredibly athletic. His production this season did not match that athleticism.
Yeah, and that happens sometimes, right? We see a lot of teams that lean on athleticism, but don't necessarily get the numbers that you expect to get with it. He's going to be a very interesting watch, particularly size-wise, too. He's not really the NFL mold at linebacker, not really the NFL mold at edge rusher either. What teams see from him and how they utilize him is going to be very, very interesting.
But he's so athletic.
But he's incredibly athletic.
And Car Cougar, Aaron Anderson, they are, those two, Car Cougar, Aaron Anderson, the best of a huge bunch of LSU wide receivers invited to the NFL Combine. The way Aaron Anderson runs could affect his draft stock by 2 rounds. Because people know he can play and they know he's a good return man. If he could just tick up a little bit higher than people think with the 40 time, he could be a big guy. Here's the 11 guys that are heading to the Combine. Nussmeier, the 4 wide receivers. I put Aaron Anderson first. Alphabetically, he's first, but also I think he carries the highest grade at this point. Barrion Brown would be second, and then Chris Hilton and Xavier Thomas look like undrafted free agent types to me right now, but that can change depending on what you do at the Combine. Bauer Sharp, the tight end, 2 edge rushers, Patrick Payton and Jack Pyburn, and then Perkins, and then those 2 DBs who both have a chance to be great players. Perkins, the most interesting, carried a first-round grade by most draft analysts preseason. Right now, what I'm seeing is around a 3rd-round grade. But you know how the NFL falls in love with pure athleticism. Whether that matches the production or not doesn't matter.
I'll give an example of what we saw right here in New Orleans. You look at a defensive player, linebacker, Stephon Anthony. He was an athletic marvel coming out of Clemson, and he was a fantastic special teamer in the NFL, but didn't really do much more than that. Hit over the century mark in terms of tackles, one of the first linebackers to do that for the Saints in a while, but never really was able to put it all together following that rookie year and beyond that one area of tackling. He was a downhill, hair on fire, athletic person, but didn't necessarily have the shoulders up football mentality like the Saints wanted.
Wasn't great at football.
Yes.
Had everything else.
Everything else.
Look, my single best, and we talked about this before we came on, my single best example of the last 10 years is John Ross. He's a wide receiver. No one had him with a first-round grade, right? He goes to the Combine. He runs a 4.22. Just a stupid fast time. And the Cincinnati Bengals not only reached into round 1 to take him, they took him with the 9th overall pick in the draft. John Ross, before the draft, was a super fast guy who wasn't great at football. Goes 9th overall. It turns out what the Bengals learned was that he's a super fast guy who's not so great at football. And 2 years later, the Bengals had the first pick in the draft because they made picks like that.
Look, speed does not mean good, right?
Speed
Fast
does not.
mean
speed
good.
is awesome.
Speed's great.
But you want a
also
couple
have to be
speed.
good.
You want a couple speed with football player. And we have talked a bunch on this show about Kurt Signetti and the things he's done. He doesn't care about speed.
No.
And I'd love to see you be able to run, but he cares about production. John Ross never had the production in college, and shockingly, never had the production in the NFL.
And the big hurt here for Harold Perkins, I almost said Kendrick Perkins, for Harold Perkins is that there's not a lot of speed when it comes to Kendrick Perkins. But Harold Perkins is that he was also part of a really, really good Blake Baker-led defense defense this past year and still didn't have the production.
Right.
And so he was a part of something that was on the rise, that was working, and even that didn't elevate his game to the level of production that you'd look for.
Yeah, but some coach like Sean Payton is going to see that athleticism and say, I can coach that up, and I've got a vision for him, and we'll see. That'll be very interesting to see. Time to bring in our guest.
All right, continuing on with the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show. Ross Jackson, Doug Mouton here, and we are now joined by our panel here in studio as our good friend Ricardo Lecomte from right here at WWL TV. And on the big screen is the one, the only Matt Moscona, the leading voice in LSU sports. Over at Locked On LSU, Matt, Ricardo, thank you very much for being here. As we run through.
Yeah, we're going to continue. We were talking a little bit about the draftees, Matt, the LSU Tigers, and the two enigmas. If you had to guess right now what round Garrett Nussmeier and Harold Perkins are going to go in this draft, and we're still going to learn more in the next 3 months, but if you had to take a guess right now, what would you say?
I think Garrett is going to end up being a top 50 pick.
Ooh.
And I would not be surprised if he sneaks into the back of round 1. He already made a big statement at the Senior Bowl. If there's one team who's convinced that the reason that Garrett Nussmeier had the 2025 season he did was because of whatever he was dealing with his core, and he answers that satisfactorily, he will race to the top of somebody's board at quarterback. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being the second quarterback off the board somewhere late in round 1.
That's very interesting.
That's very interesting.
I
and what about Harold Perkins?
And Harold Perkins,
Perkins, I think, is tougher because he's a man without a position. You saw it at LSU, and I think that he becomes even more complicated at the NFL level. He's not big enough to be a true end. He's not dynamic enough in coverage to be able to turn and run with NFL receivers. So it's almost like Isaiah Simmons. Look at Isaiah Simmons ended up being the top 10 pick of the Cardinals, but he's really struggled in the NFL to find a spot, and I think that's the same with Harold. Ideally, I think best case, Harold's probably a late day 2 pick. If there's a specific team that looks at his skill set and says, I know what to do, then I think someone will pull the trigger in day 2. Otherwise, he might slide into the early day 3 as a value pick for somebody.
I think that's the Philadelphia Eagles on the phone right there.
Which they love those,
Look to do that. It's really interesting. I love the Isaiah Simmons comparison.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I talked to a defensive back coach in the NFL a couple years ago who said that he wanted and really went to his team and petitioned them to try to trade for Isaiah Simmons to move him to safety while these other teams were trying to play him at edge and play him at linebacker and everything. And so I think that's really interesting. But the Nussmeier placement, end of round 1, is a really interesting one. Teams talk themselves into different quarterbacks at the end of round 1 every single year. Somebody shoots up the board. Why not Nussmeier?
Yeah, and the thing is, you don't have to convince, as Matt pointed out, you don't have to convince 32 teams.
Right.
You just have to get one team to be on board to be like, look, like there is a reason, everything that Garrett Nussmeier had athletically, what he could put on tape in terms of a quarterback, there was a reason why he was going into the season, he was one of the top quarterbacks on people's draft boards, maybe perhaps the number 1 quarterback. Again, you go to the combine, he's going to interview well. He's going to make sure that teams go, all right, this is a guy who can come into a quarterback room and he can do the job, he can be a professional, he can be the guy, he's a son of a coach with Doug Nussmeier, he can do all of that. Yeah. And again, just convince one. Now, where I kind of differ, I don't see a team with a need at a quarterback late in the first round, because I think, maybe all the quarterbacks, the top quarterbacks that could end up going in the first round go. I could see probably late second day, maybe Nussmeier goes in there. But again, these quarterbacks go high, teams reach, and you only have to convince one team.
Yeah. And it's those high second round picks that can trade up.
One other thing I'd add, if I could, one other thing I'd add is, remember, Tim Tebow was a first-round pick.
Right.
And every team puts their board up, and we don't know what their board looks like, but they may only have a select number of guys with first-round grades. So if a team has 16 players in this draft with first-round grades, but they have the 28th pick, they're drafting someone who they don't feel very likely has a first-round grade to begin with.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if it's a situation where a team is looking and saying, we got to use this first-round pick, and we think there's value with this player at the most important position.
Yep.
And maybe he's a depth piece early in his career behind a veteran. So I guess, Ricardo, the point being, they may not be looking for, it may not be a team that necessarily is looking for a starting quarterback right away, but sees value in the long-term upside of Nussmeier, and they pull the trigger late in round one. I could see that scenario, almost like what the Packers drafting Aaron Rodgers when they had Brett Favre.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
we
And
see
then Jordan
that
Love when
scenario.
they had
And Jordan
Aaron
Love,
Rodgers.
too.
Right.
Jordan Love, yeah, same.
Yeah.
All right, I do want to hit LSU men's basketball, and I don't want to spend a lot of time.
Why we like talking draft?
Matt McMahon in SEC play is 16-48. Which is a 250 winning percentage.
Not great.
Which shockingly is not going to get it done at LSU.
Is that good?
According to my sources, no, that's not.
All right, Matt, how soon does the hammer fall, and what are you hearing about possible candidates on the other end?
Yeah, I think the answer that's going to surprise you is I'm not convinced the hammer falls. I think there's different ways to look at the situation. Keeping in mind, what you just said is objectively true. Matt McMahon has not won nearly enough. He inherited a bad situation.
Sure.
This was a program on sanctions when Will Wade got fired, and it was not going to be good year one, and then year two went to the NIT, and last year everyone thought they'd make a step forward, didn't. They face planted, made a massive financial investment, close to $9 million on this year's roster, and they're arguably the worst team in the conference.
Yeah.
So that is objectively bad and should very likely be cause for change. But guys, remember, somebody has to pay for that.
Yeah.
If they're going to fire Matt McMahon, it's going to cost $10 million to fire Matt McMahon and his staff.
Right.
Then you have to pay for a new coach, which is going to cost $3.5 million a year. And then you have to go pay for the roster. And keep in mind what just happened over the last few months. The same boosters who you're going to go knock on their doors agreed to supplement a $54 million buyout for Brian Kelly, $91 million for Lane Kiffin, his entire staff. And then, oh, by the way, just signed a transfer portal class where they committed more than $40 million to this year's portal class. Now you're going to go to these guys and be like, by the way, thanks for that. Oh, we're also going to need a cool, I don't know, 20, 30 million bucks to fire a basketball coach, hire another one, and pay a roster. Like, donor fatigue is a real thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Listen, I want to be clear because I say this and people misunderstand me. I'm not telling you definitively Matt McMahon's coming back next year. I'm not saying that. What I'm telling you is, in conversations I have had firsthand with very influential LSU donors, there's pause from a good number of them who are like, I don't know if I want to do this again. And so they could look, they could keep losing every game by 30 and you get to the point where you have no choice but to make that decision. But they're gonna have to find some new donors who are willing to step up for this, because the usual suspects, the handful of 5 to 7 guys that they knock on those doors, I don't know that there's a great interest in footing that bill right now.
Yeah, and I was going to say, if there was any booster group that didn't have to worry about physical responsibility, it would be like LSU, just based on what they've done with football.
Right.
I think the one thing that could energize them is, what candidate are you bringing in? If we get rid of Matt McMahon, who would you bring in? And it's funny, when I talk to like just fans or guys who just follow LSU basketball, they're always like, what's the chances of Will Wade coming back? What about taking him from NC State? And I go, there's no way. But then I kind of think and go, well, if the relationship hasn't soured, I always go, the relationship's probably soured with that, but no amount of money, I mean, you could throw something in, but I just don't see that happening. So I always go, no, it's not Will Wade. But you've got to find a guy out there, if you're going to go ahead and depart with Matt McMahon, to go, hey, like that's the only reason why they would open their wallet. Says you got to get somebody exciting, a big-time head coach to come to LSU to rebuild this
And
thing.
the fact is, a lot of the money that came in for football came in because they had Lane Kiffin.
Yes,
Lane
and Lane Kiffin was
who got
available,
everybody excited, and coming up with money for the roster got a whole lot easier once you had Lane Kiffin. If that hadn't been Lane Kiffin, it wouldn't have been the same. Now, the women's basketball team, 22-3, 6th in the country. Are they a Final Four team? 3 losses, all to ranked teams. Matt, what do you think? If you had to say yes or no right now, are they a Final Four team? Because that's where Kim Mulkey has set the bar.
Yeah, I mean, it's always about draw, and do you run up against someone in the tournament that could put you out? But I think this is at least a regional final team that'd be in the Elite Eight. And can you get a matchup that favors you and you punch your ticket to the Final Four? But I mean, this team has 3 members of the Cheryl Merrill, the top top player in women's college basketball award, the Cheryl Miller Award. on the list with Flau'jae, Michaela Williams, and Malaysia Fulwiley, who came over from South Carolina. This weekend will be a great measuring stick. Look, since Kim Mulkey's been at LSU, she has not beaten South Carolina. So on Valentine's Day, they're going to play at the PMAC against South Carolina. Odd they're going to wear black uniforms. Like, you're wearing your opponent's color. That's kind of dumb. I don't like that at all. Wear your color. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, barring a terrible draw, here's the thing about women's college basketball. The reality is the top of the sport is very good. The bottom of the sport is not. So, or after the upper crust, there's just not a great number. There's not great depth of elite teams. You'll see 60, 70 point wins in the NCAA women's tournament because there isn't great depth in the sport. Right. The top of the sport is just playing at a different level, and LSU's in that number. And if you made me bet today, I'd have them in the Final Four.
Oh, and to that point, right? The 3 losses were against ranked opponents, right? We're talking about Vanderbilt, we're talking about Texas most recently during Super Bowl Radio Row week. Matt and I saw the end of that game, and then of course their earlier loss to Kentucky. And so to your point, like, these are all ranked teams, these are all good teams, these are the teams that you got to be able to compete against. And so the draw is a big part of it.
It's always going to be draw. It really is. And I think there are good pieces with LSU in terms of like having, Michaela, having Flau'jae as your like 2.
And they're a little bigger than they've been.
Because with Katie Koval coming in your center as well. I think a big key, you always got to have that third person. And I think Jada Richard is like the guard. Like, that's the guard that can get things going. One thing about going into tournament play, got to have great guard play. Yeah. And if she's on it, they're going to the finals.
So yes or no?
I'd say right now, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going yes. I've seen it. I've seen it already. I've seen it too much. I know what Kim Mulkey's capable of. I know what Flau'jae Johnson's capable of. I'm never not buying into that team.
Yeah, no, that's legit. Although if they're a 2 seed, they're going to have to go through some number 1 to get there. Sure. Which will be super interesting. And then, Matt, we want to hit LSU baseball. Am I wrong to be incredibly excited about LSU's chances to get back to Omaha this year? Derek Curiel, I said it in the first segment, might be my favorite LSU hitter in a decade. I love watching that guy hit. He's a little bigger and a little stronger. He needs to hit more power to be the kind of major leaguer he wants to be. But is there anything when you look at this team that doesn't scream Omaha?
Nope.
Nope.
All right.
It is. This is Jay Johnson's most talented team, and I don't think it's particularly close.
Yeah.
I know everyone says, but they had Skeens and Cruz. Yes, they did, and that was incredible top-level talent. And Ty Floyd was outstanding on that team as well. But guys, you had a lot of program guys on that team. You had guys like Gavin Dugas and Cade Beloso and Josh Pearson, guys that were not big leaguers, were never going to be, that played a key role on that team. A year ago, and I say this with the utmost respect, that team had no business winning a national championship. That is Jay Johnson's finest coaching job by a plumb mile. I mean, they just figured that was a team with amazing continuity. They had veteran players who stepped up in big moments for them. I mean, Luis Hernandez, when catcher looked like a giant black hole, ended up being so steady. Look, you had 2 pitchers that by the end of the season became a dominant 1-2 punch that you rode through the tournament, which can happen. But I'm talking like top to bottom on this roster, it is by a mile. Like, we will look back, guys, in hindsight, and this Jay Johnson team, regardless of what happens in the postseason, this Jay Johnson team will produce more big leaguers than any of his previous teams. So this is one of those teams that will put itself in position to host a regional, be a national seed, so the road back to Omaha will run through Alex Box Stadium. And if you can go win a weekend at the Box in June, you're back in Omaha. Now, once you get there, anything can happen, as we've seen. And it's very hard to win in the postseason. But Jay Johnson's mastered it, man. If you go bet against Jay Johnson at this point, that's just stupid.
I wouldn't dare.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I think this LSU program is in a better spot coming off a championship after 23 to 24. The 24, I think Jay Johnson learned a lot of lessons in terms of what he needed to do to build after a championship. this team coming off of winning the 25, like they're loaded, they're stacked.
Yeah.
They get the right transfers in there, and it's like proven talent. It's like proven guys that like even though they haven't played SEC ball, like they're proven guys that can fill those holes in there. Plus you have a top end guy like a Curiel. You've got a Casey Evans that could be your potential Friday night starter. They're stacked and they're loaded. And I feel good going into this season. Like this team can easily get back to Omaha.
To me, the only thing that derails them is a bunch of injuries.
Yeah.
Matt, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time. Ross, you know what time it is?
Last call!
It is time for our last call now on the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show. Russ Jackson, what are you making for us?
We're going to go for a Cherry Bomb Fizz. It's a nice, easy 3-ingredient drink. We need 1 cherry. We need half an ounce of maraschino liqueur. Yep, nice and easy. And then you just top it off with your favorite sparkling wine, which is an overall category, whatever it is that you like. Cavas, Proseccos, champagnes, whatever you like. That's it. Nice and easy.
Okay.
Good for a celebration. I'll get started.
All right, you're mixing. Ricardo, what's your last call?
Let's go give out a shout out to Ham in America on the Diamonds, especially.
Nice.
The Southeastern baseball team is going to start their season this weekend, and they're one of the top mid-major teams, I think, in terms of like the power rankings. They're in the top 25 in the power rankings according to 11.7 Baseball, who has a nice little composite rankings of all the mid-majors. I think they're a serious contender for the Southland Conference a championship and getting into the NCAA tournament. They look solid. And how about the softball team? This past weekend, they beat number 5 Oregon and upset them.
Wow.
And not only that, got into the top 25 in the nation. They're a nationally ranked team.
Love that.
Southeastern Line softball. They've been to the NCAA tournament. They've won in the NCAA tournament. Now they're ranked going into this season. They could be a very scary ball club.
Tangipahoa Parish getting a little love
Yeah.
on the
There you go.
Sports Show. All right, while you top those off, I'm going to do mine real quick.
Yeah,
Look,
go for
mine's about Derek Coriel, and I said this before. He's probably one of my favorite LSU players of all time. And all right, put it this way. Here's what he did in his freshman season. The Major League Baseball average on-base percentage, just the times you get on base, was .315 last year, right? Derek Coriel, his on-base percentage in his first year at LSU was .470. It was top 5 in the SEC. He was on base almost every other time he came to the plate. He was spectacular at that. Jay Johnson said he didn't need to lift a weight to be a great player at LSU, but Johnson also encouraged him to lift weights and get bigger and stronger, because to be the kind of major league player he wants to be, he's got to hit some home runs. You just do. You have to develop some power. So to me, Derek Coriel trying to develop power, and he's still such a young guy. Generally in baseball, your power comes as you get into your 20s, you get your man strength. But the fact that Jay Johnson doesn't need him to do that, but encouraged it, is Jay Johnson not looking after the LSU baseball program, but looking after Derek Coriel's long-term career. And to me, that's one of the many things that make Jay Johnson a one of one as a college baseball coach, because it's not about him. It's about helping Paul Skeens become the best pitcher in baseball, or probably right now the second best pitcher in baseball. And it's about helping Derek Coriel, who he doesn't need to hit home runs, but he wants him to, because that's what's best for Derek Coriel. And I love that about this team. And that's why I think LSU is going to be back.
It's insane, the outfielders. Like Dylan Cruz in the outfield a couple of years ago. Now Derek Coriel, like major leaguers. And Derek Coriel, if he's got some pop, woo.
If he's got some pop,
he's going to be a
top 5
spectacular player. Easily.
Well, cheers on the way out. I'll give mine real quick. Mine's super simple. We've talked about it already here on the show. Today is my birthday as we record. And in my opinion, as a son of the city and somebody that is New Orleans, I think that the best time to have a birthday in New Orleans is during Carnival season. February.
Of course.
The city's throwing me a birthday party for the next week, and I'm super excited to indulge in it. And I'm super excited as well to have been able to spend this day in this studio with the two of you, working with Matt. So thank you guys very much. Really
Happy birthday, Ross.
Jackson,
yes.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
That's solid.
That's easy. That's nice.
Oh.
That's solid.
I
Reminds me of the Key Royale, the little.
I had the cherry, the fizz, the bomb, and then the fizz.
That's
so
it.
Cherry,
Nice.
bomb, fizz. Yep.
Yes.
Cherry
I had
bomb,
all
fizz
3.
bomb.
All right, well, we knocked these down. Thanks for watching this edition of the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show.
Happy birthday, Ross.
Woo! Woo!